My name is Ben, and this happened about 2 years ago, right after I'd moved to a little town called North Pownell, Vermont, that it's way up in the southwest corner of the state, practically in New York, that you've probably never heard of it. Most people haven't, that it's the kind of place you end up, not the kind you choose. I'd taken a remote IT job that didn't pay great but was enough to afford a small, creaky 2-bedroom house that smelled perpetually of damp wood and old paint. The silence there wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like a held breath. The reason I'd picked Vermont was because of my girlfriend, Chloe. She wasn't living with me yet, but she was supposed to come up on weekends. We'd been dating for about 8 months, long distance for the last 3 since I'd moved. Chloe lived in Albany, which was only an hour's drive, but it felt like a different world. She was an artist, a painter, with this restless energy that both electrified and exhausted me. That first weekend she visited, I remember watching her walk from her car to my front door, her hips swaying in these tight, faded jeans that looked like they'd been painted on. She had on a simple white tank top, and the way it stretched across her chest made my throat go dry. That I'd been alone in that quiet house for a month, and the sight of her was a physical shock. She laughed when she saw me staring, a low, throaty sound. "Miss me much?" she said, dropping her bag and wrapping her arms around my neck. She smelled like cigarettes and lavender shampoo. That I buried my face in her neck, my hands sliding down to the small of her back, feeling the firm muscle there. My heart was hammering, and it wasn't just from desire. There was a nervousness, a fear that I'd somehow fucked this up, that the oppressive quiet of the town had already sunk into me and made me dull. That first night, we ordered pizza from the only place in town that delivered, a spot called Tony's with grease-stained boxes and cheese that always congealed too fast. That we ate on the floor of my living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. Chloe talked a mile a minute about her week, her hands gesturing wildly, her eyes bright. That I mostly just watched her. The way her full lips moved, the faint gloss catching the lamplight, the way a strand of her dark hair stuck to the corner of her mouth and she kept tucking it behind her ear. That I was hypnotized. That I wanted to memorize her. Later, in my narrow bed, with the ancient springs groaning under our weight, it was even more intense. The moon was full, casting a cold blue light through the bare window. It lit up the sweat on her skin, the curve of her shoulder, the tense line of her calf as she hooked her leg around my hip, her painted toenails, a deep blood red, dug into the sheets. Every sound was amplified in the silent house. Our breathing, the rustle of the cheap cotton sheets, the distant, lonely cry of a whippoorwill outside. Afterward, she fell asleep almost instantly, her head on my chest, one arm flung across my stomach. That I lay there for a long time, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of the night around us. That's when I first heard the whispering. That it was so faint I thought I'd imagined it. That a sibilant, rhythmic sound, like radio static just below the threshold of hearing. I held my breath, straining to listen. That it seemed to be coming from outside, drifting on the night air. That it wasn't words, not then. Just a pattern, a hushed, repetitive sigh. That I chalked it up to the wind in the pines that crowded my property and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, over coffee that was too strong, I mentioned it to Chloe. She just shrugged, stretching like a cat. The tank top strap slid down her arm, and I found myself staring at the smooth, tan skin of her shoulder. "It's an old house, Ben. It's probably just settling. Or mice in the walls," she grinned, "or ghosts." "Very funny," I said, but the memory of the sound made a cold knot form in my stomach. That we decided to go into the slightly larger town of Bennington to get groceries and maybe see a movie. The main street of North Pownell is basically a blink-and-you-miss-it affair. A post office, a shuttered general store, and a diner called the Blue Spoon that was only open for breakfast and lunch. As we walked from my house toward where I'd parked my car, I noticed an old man sitting on the porch of a neighboring house. That he was just rocking in a chair, staring straight ahead. His lips were moving. That I slowed down. "You see that?" I muttered to Chloe. "See what?" She was scrolling through her phone, not really paying attention. "That guy. He's talking to himself." She glanced up, squinting in the bright morning sun. The old man's mouth was working silently, a constant, murmuring motion. As we watched, his eyes, milky with cataracts, slowly tracked toward us. But his whispering didn't stop. It was the same rhythmic pattern I'd heard last night. A chill, completely separate from the crisp autumn air, went through me. "He's just an old dude, Ben," Chloe said, slipping her phone into her back pocket. The movement pulled her jeans even tighter across her rear, and for a split second, the fear was eclipsed by a sharp, inappropriate jolt of lust that I felt guilty immediately. Probably has dementia or something. Come on, I'm starving. We got in the car and drove past him. His head turned slowly, following our progress, his lips never ceasing their silent conversation. The encounter with the old man stuck with me, a splinter in my mind at IN Bennington, surrounded by the normalcy of a Shaw's supermarket and people going about their Saturday. It seemed silly. Chloe was in a great mood, laughing, grabbing my hand, her fingers lacing through mine. In the fluorescent-lit produce aisle, she stood on her tiptoes to reach for some apples, and her shirt rolled up, exposing a sliver of smooth, flat stomach and the hip-hugging waistband of her jeans that I had to look away, my face feeling hot. The contrast was jarring, the mundane reality of choosing between Gala and Granny Smith, and the intense animal pull I felt toward her. We were in the checkout line when I saw him for the second time. The stranger that he was standing outside, looking through the large plate glass window, that he wasn't looking at the displays or the people inside, that he was looking directly at me, that he was tall and gaunt, dressed in a dark, outdated suit that hung off his frame. His hair was black and lank, plastered to his pale forehead. But it was his eyes that held me, they were too dark, like pools of ink, and they didn't blink. Ben? Earth to Ben. Chloe nudged me. You paying? I snapped my attention back to the cashier, fumbling for my wallet. When I looked back at the window, he was gone. You okay? Chloe asked, loading the bags into the cart. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, I said too quickly. Just thought I saw someone I knew. The lie felt flimsy. The rest of the day was tinted with a low-grade anxiety that at the movie theater. I kept scanning the dark rows, half expecting to see that pale, gaunt face staring back, that I couldn't concentrate on the film. All I could focus on was the warmth of Chloe's leg pressed against mine, the scent of her perfume mixing with the smell of fake butter. During a loud action sequence, she leaned over, her breast pressing against my arm, and whispered, "This is fun," her breath hot in my ear. A shiver that was equal parts fear and desire ran down my spine. My reaction felt all wrong, twisted by the unease that had been growing since last night. That night, back at my house, the whispering was louder. It wasn't just from outside anymore. It seemed to be coming from the walls themselves, a soft, insistent chorus of hushed voices, all repeating the same indecipherable phrase. Asterisk. Asterisk. It was just nonsense syllables, but they were repeated with a dreadful, ritualistic precision. Chloe heard it this time. We were in bed, trying to watch a show on my laptop, but the sound was a constant, nagging presence underneath the dialogue. What is that? She said, pausing the video. Her face was illuminated by the screen, her features drawn in the blue light. She looked younger, scared. I told you, I said, my voice low. I heard it last night. We lay there in silence, listening. The whispering seemed to coil through the room, a snake of sound. Asterisk. My skin was crawling. Without thinking, I reached for Chloe, pulling her closer. My hand found the bare skin of her waist under her sleep shirt. Her skin was goosebumped. I could feel the rapid flutter of her heartbeat. I wanted to comfort her, but my own fear was a live wire. My fingers traced the line of her hip bone, and I felt her tense, then relax into my touch. It was a desperate, primal comfort. We made love again, but it was different this time, fiercer, more frantic, a way to drown out the sound that seeped from the very foundations of the house. Afterward, the whispering seemed to have receded, or maybe we were just too exhausted to hear it. We fell into a fitful sleep. Sunday morning dawned gray and drizzly. The weirdness of the night before felt slightly ridiculous in the flat, gray light. Chloe had to head back to Albany by early afternoon for a gallery showing she was helping to organize. We decided to get one last breakfast at the Blue Spoon. The diner was a small, warm space that smelled of coffee, bacon, and fried potatoes. It was crowded with the usual Sunday morning crowd, mostly older locals. We took the last available booth near the back. Our waitress was a woman named Brenda, who I'd seen a few times before. She was in her 60s with a kind, tired face and a permanent coffee stain on her apron. Today, though, her smile seemed strained. She took our order, pancakes for Chloe, eggs and toast for me, and poured our coffee. As she was walking away, I heard it, under her breath, A soft, muttered stream of sound. Asterisk. Asterisk. My blood went cold that I looked sharply at Chloe, but she was adding sugar to her coffee, oblivious that I watched Brenda as she moved behind the counter. Her lips were moving. Not in a normal, what's next kind of way. It was that same rhythmic, repetitive murmur. And she wasn't the only one that I started to notice it all around the diner. The old farmer 2 booths over, cutting into his sausages, his mouth working silently. A young mother trying to corral her toddler, a constant, hushed whisper under her cheerful cooing. It was everywhere. A secret liturgy being recited by the entire town. Chloe, I whispered, leaning across the table. My knuckles were white where I gripped my coffee mug. Listen. She frowned. Listen to what? Them. Everyone. They're all whispering. She stopped stirring her coffee and really listened. Her playful expression slowly melted away, replaced by a dawning confusion, then fear. Her eyes widened as she scanned the room. She heard it too. The low, pervasive hum of it, a sinister undercurrent to the clatter of cutlery and the chatter of conversation. Oh my God, she breathed. Ben, what is that? Before I could answer, Brenda was back with our plates. She set them down with a clatter. Anything else I can get you folks? She asked, her voice bright and normal, but her eyes were glazed, distant, and her lips continued their faint, ceaseless motion. We're good, thanks, I managed to say. As she walked away, Chloe grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were cold. I want to go, now. We didn't touch our food. I threw a 20 on the table and we practically ran out of the diner. The drizzle had turned into a steady, cold rain. We sprinted to the car, the whispers feeling like they were chasing us, clinging to the wet air. Inside the car, we sat in silence for a moment, breathing heavily. The windows began to fog up. What the hell was that, Ben? Chloe's voice was trembling. She hugged herself and I could see the outline of her breasts pressed together by her arms. The sight, usually so arousing, now felt grotesquely out of place. My mind was reeling. I don't know, I said honestly. I've been hearing it since I got here. Last night, it was in the house. She stared at me, her face pale. Why didn't you tell me it was that bad? I thought I was going crazy. The words burst out of me. I thought it was the wind or the pipes or... I don't know. We drove back to my house in a thick, terrified silence. The wipers swished back and forth, a metronome counting down the seconds. Every person we passed on the street, a kid on a bike, a woman walking her dog, their heads were slightly bowed, their mouths moving in that same silent chant. When we got back to my place, the atmosphere had changed. The house didn't feel like a sanctuary anymore. It felt like a trap. The whispering was there, waiting for us, a little louder now, as if encouraged by the rain tapping on the roof. Chloe started packing her things in a frenzy, throwing clothes into her bag without folding them. I can't stay here, Ben. This is not right. This is seriously fucked up. I know, I said, feeling helpless. I wanted her to stay, to not leave me alone with this, but I couldn't ask her to. The fear was a physical presence in the room. She zipped up her bag and turned to me. Her eyes were wide, scared. She looked so beautiful it hurt. The rain had dampened her hair, making it curl around her face. A drop of water traced a path from her temple down her neck, disappearing into the collar of her shirt. I had a sudden, overpowering urge to kiss her, to push her back onto the bed and lose myself in her, to use her body to forget the creeping horror outside the door. The thought shocked me with its intensity and its sheer inappropriateness. I just stood there, paralyzed by fear and desire. She must have seen something in my face. She took a step back. I'll call you when I get home, okay? She said, her voice soft but firm. I just nodded, unable to speak. I walked her to her car. The rain was coming down harder now. She gave me a quick, dry kiss on the lips, then got in and started the engine. I watched her taillights disappear down the road until they were swallowed by the gray drizzle and the whispering pines. The sense of isolation that descended on me was absolute and terrifying. I went back inside. The house was deathly quiet, except for that damn whispering. It seemed to be coming from every direction at once. I tried to turn on the TV, but the screen was just full of frantic, dancing static, and from the speakers came a distorted, amplified version of the whisper. Asterisk anime start. I turned it off, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pulled out my phone. No service. The icon showed a stark, empty triangle. That a wave of panic rose in my throat. That I was cut off. That's when the knocking started. That it wasn't a loud, aggressive knock. That it was a soft, polite tap 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 on the front door. 3 precise raps. Then silence. That I froze. Nobody ever came to my door. The old man who delivered my mail just left it in the box. Tap tap tap. I crept to the door and peered through the peephole. That it was him. The stranger from the grocery store window. That he was standing on my porch, perfectly still, the rain plastering his black hair to his skull. His ink-black eyes were fixed on the door, as if he could see me through the wood. That he was close enough that I could see the pale, almost translucent skin of his face, the way it stretched tight over his cheekbones. His lips were moving, forming the same silent words as everyone else. But on him, it looked different. That it didn't look like he was repeating something. That it looked like he was the source. That I stumbled back from the door, my breath catching in my chest. That I backed into the living room, my eyes fixed on the door handle, half expecting it to turn. It didn't. The knocking didn't come again. That I spent the next hour paralyzed with fear, curled in a ball in the corner of my sofa, listening. The whispering from the walls continued, a maddening soundtrack to my panic. The rain fell. Nothing happened. Eventually the adrenaline crash hit me and a profound exhaustion washed over me. That I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, it was dark outside. The rain had stopped. The house was silent. The whispering had stopped. The silence was somehow more frightening than the noise had been. That it was a watchful, predatory silence. That I got up, my joints stiff with fear and cold. That I checked my phone. Still no service. The clock on the screen said it was just past 9 p.m. That I needed to know if he was still out there. That I had to look. That I moved to the front window and carefully peeled back a corner of the blinds. The street was empty. The old street lamp at the end of my walk cast a sickly yellow puddle of light on the